Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have you back this week for another great podcast. I'm telling you, we've had a great lineup in third quarter, and I know I've got another great guest for you today. Remember, we've been talking about that 6P business owner formula, and I've been finding guests in there. And if you don't remember, those 6Ps are the people, the promotion, the pricing, productivity, profit, and processes. And today I've got another great guest that's going to help us in that area. And Josh is with us. And Josh, would you share with our listeners today, what will you help them solve?
Yeah, well, what I'm going to help them solve is if you're ambitious and you're a business owner and you are just working your tail off and you can't seem to figure out why you're not getting ahead, is we'll be talking about the core principles of this book right here, Work the System, and helping ambitious business owners, break free from the day-to-day and do that by getting control of their business systems.
Well, great. I know this is going to be a great conversation because it's about that processes and working your system. And I'm excited about that. Josh Fonger is with us. He's a consultant, he's a coach, and he's a speaker who's recognized as the leading authority in business performance architecture. And he's CEO of WTS Enterprises. He's helped hundreds of businesses grow simply by using the WTS method, from working in their businesses to working on their businesses. So Josh, I'm excited about this conversation because I work with a lot of small business owners, and that working on the business, they're challenged in that. They're normally always working in it. So welcome to the podcast.
Hey, glad to be here, Gary.
Well, let's start off with really kind of setting up what is some of the challenges for those people that's always working in the business? And what do you mean by really this term of a yo-yo business? And how can we break free from that?
Yeah. Well, great questions. There's a couple embedded in there. And yo-yo business is a coin or a term I coined after working with a number of companies and reviewing their financials and trying to help them grow and realizing that they typically grow when they get started out. But then they hit a plateau, whether that plateau is 500,000, 1 million, 5 million, whatever it is. And then I'll look at their financials and they kind of just go up and down at that zone, wherever that zone is. And after analyzing it again and again and again, I realize it's because they are the bottleneck to their growth. And their business architecture, the structure they built is the bottleneck, and they have to think differently about it. And usually when they're kind of on the downward cycle, everyone gets alarmed and immediately starts getting into selling mode. Marketing and selling, we've got to get new business. And of course, they eventually figure out how to get some more companies working with them, and they'll grow back up. And then of course, it's, hey, we got to start delivering on this. And so then everyone's focus is on delivery of that, whatever that product or service is. Of course, they congratulate themselves there at the top. And then all of a sudden things start going down again because they might have quality issues, customer service issues, whatever it might be, because they never really built the systems to handle that growth. And then they start going down again, and they're, kind of taking care of the fires that came from all that new business. And then all of a sudden their sales are low again, cash flow is low again. And so they just kind of meander at that level. And so that's a yo-yo business. And so my goal is obviously to help the owner realize, hey, you can't keep running the business this way. There actually needs to be a CEO. There actually needs to be an owner. There needs to be a visionary. There needs to be someone who actually is working on the business to take it somewhere, not just somebody who is doing the work. And when I analyze what an owner of a company typically is doing, they're doing a lot of things, but they're not actually doing ownership level things, right? So they're not actually working on business development. They're not working on staff development. They're not working on system development. They don't have a financial plan, a budget, a forecast, and they're really just working hard and keeping everyone happy, clients, customers, employees, but they're not actually going anywhere. And so I try to, with the work the system method, help them to see their company differently and come up with a clear strategy and principles and procedures that allow them to possibly 10x or 100x their business, not just 5% up, 5% down, 5% up, 5% down, but actually, take it beyond that.
Yeah, and that becomes a real challenge because, as we both know, it's the business owner that has to change. It's kind of interesting how you kind of set it up. I share sometimes when I'm speaking is that I call business owners, the business actually owns them. And then the entrepreneur, they're probably the one on the yo-yo effect for you. They're up and down, but they're still the bottleneck in it because they're not seeing that. But really, it's getting them to become a CEO. And they may look at a large corporation. Well, what is a large corporation CEO does? He sees the picture from the full view, and he's giving that full view there. So I'm really curious is what would be some methods, and I don't know if now's the best time to go in the work system method, or what's some things that you see that will help them break free to kind of start to get that progress to be able to grow their business?
Yeah, a big thing we work on, with anyone I'm coaching or consulting a CEO is to help them to see that their business is separate from them. Whether the business is startup phase and they've got no employees or they have 100 employees, that it's a separate entity, right? And so you want to treat it as a separate entity, and then that helps you be more objective. We call it the systems mindset. So you're looking down at your company, outside and slightly elevated, and then you see the separate processes that make up the results of your business. And once you can do that objectively, not personally, then you can say, hey, you know what, we have an issue here, we have an issue there, and we need to fix the systems, not I need to go in there and work harder to solve that problem. It's there's a system that continuously is generating this result that we want to improve or change completely. And then we get them to think more about how do we build a system to solve that, or tweak a system to solve that, not how do you get involved and just jump in there and put out the fire again. And so it's about not seeing you as a firefighter, but as a business owner. And then not just doing it from a theoretical standpoint, but from a actual tactical standpoint. Is the theory, everyone likes the theory, but tactically what that means is that if your phone call, like let's say you have a telephone sales rep, if they're not doing good on the phones, it's not, I need to go in there and start taking care of these telephone sales calls because they're so bad. It's let's actually analyze this script. Let's actually write down what actually should be said. Let's come up with the best way to do it. And then let's get everybody on the team to buy into that. And then if they follow this process, and we have average people follow this process, that problem is going to be solved from here on out because we have now developed a system for, let's just say, telephone sales. And that's way more valuable and way more scalable and way more impactful than the owner just going back in and doing the sales calls themselves. And that's always what we see is that the fastest solution is the owner just jumps back in and does it. But we want them to say, hey, let's not just think about tomorrow or next week. Let's just think about the next 10 years. And let's do the important, non-urgent thing. And that's why I have to, as a coach, I have to, prod them along and say, you're going to be way better off building that system than you jumping in again. And once that we build a few of those systems and kind of get the flywheel moving, then there's no going back, right? They start to have more money, they start to have more time, and then of course they can reinvest those two assets to build more of their systems out.
Yeah. And the tough part is, as you know, as I'm sure you found that, is them not jumping back in, them being the firefighter. I know for myself, when I went through that several years, I told myself I wanted to get there, but I became the firefighter till I kind of really took a step back, got some good coaching and got a method in place. And the thing they don't realize is really it allows them to enjoy their business so much more, instead. And where the other side of it, it really stresses them out. And to be quite honest, they get into burnout mode in that area. So can you share with us some of the things that you walk through in the work system method and how, so they can see how they can really make more money and really actually work less?
Yeah, definitely. And the backstory behind this book, Work the System, that Sam Carpenter wrote, is that I was already doing a lot of business consulting before I met Sam and started working with him on this Work the System Method stuff. Is that I would fly into these companies and help them with their inside sales or outside sales. We do some training on how to price better merchandise. We do some strategic planning. We do culture workshops, you name it, to help the company. And we would see some improvement. People would kind of buy in and think, hey, this is great. They would move in a direction for a little while, but then they would go back to old habits. They would go back to the way that things were. That person that I trained, they would leave the company and then they were back to where they were. And when I met Sam, this was like 12 years ago, I realized that the piece that he had that I was missing is that you've got to document as you go. You have to document the strategy. You can't just think it up. You have to document those principles. You have to actually document the systems of your business. And if you do that, the people may come and go, but the systems are going to stay. And you don't have to use some kind of advanced AI technology to do this, which there are some good ones out there. It really just comes down to, hey, what is the best way to deliver this package? Let's get the best ideas. Let's write it down. And then let's just hold people accountable to doing it that best way. And whenever new ideas come, we'll put those ideas into that documented system. And Sam always says there's a difference between a small struggling business and a large successful business. Is a large successful business has documented processes and procedures. The small one doesn't. And so it's not like it's a mystery. You just have to get started in doing that. It takes some discipline. It takes a little bit of a strategic shift, a cultural shift, but you can get there. And that's again what we help the companies do. And so the core fundamentals of the Work the System method, if I was going to break it into 4 parts, is to see your business as a machine, as a collection of systems, right? And then it's to come up with a strategy, a direction you want to go in. Entrepreneurs are all about being flexible and innovative and changing on a dime, but if you're going to actually build an institution to last, you need to have a clear direction and stick with it. Principles, right? Otherwise, as your team grows, your culture is going to become more and more chaotic, diluted, cancerous. And so you just need to decide, like, these are the principles we're going to all abide by. And then you had to have some systems documented, like, here's how we do what we do. And we're going to keep getting better at it. I mean, I've got a client right now, he's has a restaurant that is a brewery. And, the burgers keep changing on the menu as different cooks and different people work there. Hey, it's different on Friday night than on Wednesday. What's different with the burgers? And it's like, and I keep telling them, like, you got to have recipes for each of these burgers and pictures of what it's supposed to look like. And you have to hold your people in the kitchen accountable to doing it the same way. And he wants to be like, well, I want them to kind of have some freedom. And they're all good at cooking and, they like to do it their own way. It's like, well, you're going to have a disaster on your hands. And they do all the time, right? And, but if you just had a recipe and you stuck with it, life would be so much simpler, right? And so a simple business is a profitable business. And we try to, make those things integrated, both from a strategy all the way down to the procedures. And then, of course, if you bring in good people, which of course people want to work in a nice organization, things just work. And that's what we try to build. And that's what the Work System method is about. And it's based on a real life story of Sam Carpenter taking his 100-hour work week, hellish organization, to working 2 hours a month and raising his income 100 times. So it's like, you can see it, and it's a great story about how to make that happen.
You're listening to the Small Business Answer Man podcast. We will be right back. Excellent. We can go a couple different ways. What is, I definitely want to get in the systems mindset on that side of it. Got that question there. Mm-hmm. Is there a story maybe you can share of a business? You don't have to give the exact name, those type of things, of kind of what it done. You just shared one with Sam, but for somebody that you've worked with, what would you prefer?
Sure. Yeah. Either way is fine.
That always gets them to think, well, maybe it would work for my business. And kind of that's to me, to get you a
I-
call. We don't push to try to sell, but the thing is stories sell. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, either way, we can do both.
Yep.
We got plenty of stories. We should
Yep.
be fine.
And then I'll end up asking you that systems mindset one and stuff. And we're I try to shoot for that 20, 25 minutes. So we're doing good on time there.
No,
Okay.
sounds great.
And now back to the show. Well, lots you said there, Josh, that we could kind of really cover in, but I wonder if maybe the best way is you talked a little bit about Josh's change or Sam's change in his company that he made. Do you have some practicality of companies that you've worked with that, it's made that change? Because part of what we're trying to do is get business owners and entrepreneurs to realize they don't have to do it the hard way. They don't have to struggle. They can get over this. And this is one of the things I talk about, because I will tell you, systems and processes are not the number one thing that is a strength for most business owners. And I'm sure you know that, what you've seen there. So is there a story maybe of someone you've worked with that you could share with us? And you don't have to give us the exact name, things of that nature, but kind of the background of that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways I could go. People want to see, I don't know, 20 plus case studies. They can go to our website, WTSenterprises.com, or check the back of the book. But I first want to start by saying, whether you are an online entrepreneur, you've got a family business, you've got a restaurant like we just talked about, or you're in a tech company, the person I was just talking to while I was late to this podcast, as an accounting practice, right? It doesn't really matter. These business fundamentals work. I'll just think of an online marketing company, Will, that I was working with. And so in his case, this is classic, right? So he started a business, it's continued to grow. He's got like 10 employees, and they have one client that is a pharmaceutical company. They've got another client that's a church. They've got another client that is some building materials, like construction materials, and they all over the map. Good people, and they want to do it all. They do some copywriting, they do some design, they do some podcasts. Hey, we'll help you with the website, we'll help you with SEO. And I'm like, hey, first off, your company's way too complicated. You're doing everything, right? You can't be great at everything. And second off, your client mix is everybody. And so you got to come up with a different hook, a different strategy, different pricing, positioning, all the things you talked about, the P's. You're just not going to be able to scale that out, because he, brilliant guy, had to be involved with each of these clients, because you have to really know a company to do good marketing for them and to scale it out digitally. And so there's no way it's going to scale, right? And in this case, he actually hired me as a consultant, and we worked together for a number of years. But the key shift was that he had to say, strategically, what direction do I want to go? And so there's a current reality is working with these clients, is making money. But over time, what are the clients we're going to try to attract, and what is the kind of work we're going to try to do? And over time, he was able to, in this couple of years, just focus in on the building materials industry, right? Which doesn't sound very sexy, but like, okay, building materials, and we're going to do, XYZ services for them, search engine optimization, website development. Like, these are the core things that they always need this, and they always need it the same way. And all of these companies are not very good at it. And we have some direct connections with some leaders in this industry and these conferences. And we can go from having, 15 obscure clients to like 300, all the same, quickly. And over a couple of years, that's what they did. And they're able to become extremely profitable, extremely systematic. And he doesn't work at all in the business anymore. The company's grown, doubled in size. He doesn't work there anymore, right? Because he has a CEO to run it for him, because he realized he didn't like running the business, right? He liked being an entrepreneur. He liked to be, generate new ideas. And so because of that entrepreneurial aspect of himself, he was able to say, I'm going to build this thing and I worked with his second in command, the general manager, and they built a machine to do this kind of work at a high profit margin in a systematic way, in a simple way. And now no one can touch him, right? But it took some leadership on his part, and it took shifting the strategy. It took, codifying these principles, and then him saying, hey, this company is now not me. It's not Will's company. It's ABC marketing, right? And now I'm going to be able to continue to do the things that I want to do and still, innovate and coach my company and the people there. But now it actually has a profit generating machine built on systems, and everyone just follows those same processes. And again, no one can touch them. And this is the same with any industry, any company. You just need to, as entrepreneurs, typically just give yourself some boundaries, stay within those boundaries, and simplify, simplify, simplify. That was, that's a great example, but there's certainly plenty of others.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that because it sets up what I really want to talk about. Because right now, some business owners, that sounds like a pipe dream, Josh. That's what they're thinking. I just know they're saying, yeah, I want that. But it's that dream that is kind of elusive to them. Or maybe it's a goal that I talk about. And I can tell people, and I'm sure you've seen this, in 3 years, you can make that change. It's not overnight. But if you're willing, like you said, the boundaries and stay within the systems and work the system, and you don't have to create all the processes, because we know as business owners, because I'm one of them, I would be terrible at that. My wife is really good at it. She creates processes for us and is really good at that. But you find the person on your team that is, and then you help them show the others who can do that. So what I want to kind of end with is, before our time wraps up, is I think it really sets it up nice, is really what is that systems mindset for the business owner, and why is it so necessary for the business to be able to get to the point that you're talking about of the story that you just shared with us?
Yeah, well, it comes down to seeing everything as Sam puts it, a collection of systems, right? So in his book, and just a great story, it's a great way to talk about it, is that he always saw his company as this dysfunctional, he calls it a mass of sights, sounds, and events. And so he was always chasing from one fire to the next. And he had a kind of this vision, and he details it in the book because he was literally sleeping at the business, living at the business, like it was a 24/7 call center. And he said what he saw was his business on a table, and it's spread out on a table in all these different pieces, these little tools, little machines on this table. And then he realized that actually his business was a collection of all these little pieces, how we, answer the phone, and how we collect the check, and how we do payroll, and how we, hook up a new system, or how we onboard. They're all these separate little pieces. And so if I just fix the separate pieces and put it back together, I could have a perfect business, right? And that was the vision that he needed to see, as opposed to just saying, I need to jump off and, handle this problem and this problem, this problem, this problem, and go after this, this dopamine hit of being the hero, being the, the victor in the next little battle. And instead realizing, hey, you know what, I want to build a perfect business. That gets me excited. And I know that it's going to happen one day, whether it happens in 6 weeks or it happens in 6 years, if I just get these separate pieces right. And so he went about, and what really solidified the systems mindset, and it does for a lot of my clients, is pick your biggest problem and document a system, hand that system off to someone other than yourself, have them run it, and then figure out how much time you're going to save the rest of your life. And so that's what really solidified it for him, is he figured out a system for depositing checks. This is 20 years ago. And once he wrote it down and had someone else deposit checks for him, this is literally going to the bank, depositing checks and cash. He realized, wow, I'm going to save 2 hours of my life every week for the rest of my life. And he did the math, and that was 20 plus years ago. And I've got a guy who does home flipping, right? So he flips homes. He's got a bunch of houses, and he's a real estate investor. And he's going to Lowe's and Home Depot and picking up materials and going to the different job sites all the time, maybe 3 or 4 hours a week. And I said, I bet someone else can drive to Home Depot and pick up materials and deliver it to these houses. Like you own this company, right? You're making a lot of money. Can someone else pick up materials? Like, well, I don't know. And we wrote a system for how to pick up materials for the different job sites. And then he's paying somebody, $18 an hour to just pick up materials for him. And I'm like, you just saved 3 hours a week, every week for the rest of your life, writing a system for picking up materials. And he had been doing it this way for like 15 years, like for a long time. And he just thought, well, no one else can do it because, what if they need, if they're not working the jobs, then the jobs will not be profitable. We got to hurry and get the materials. It was always urgent, urgent, urgent. And it didn't have to be that way. Right. And so the systems mindset gets solidified once you take one piece of his business. I mean, obviously flipping homes, there's a lot to flipping homes, but one piece of it, just one piece is getting materials. And so we found the piece that the owner was doing and realized we could take that piece, we could document it, we could delegate it, and then he would have that part of his life back forever. And that's really what makes it stick, is people seeing, wow, if I just keep doing this, working the system, I'm gonna have my life back. I'm gonna have a great business. My stress is gonna go down, and ultimately, they can achieve some of those goals, dreams, visions that they had when they first got started, instead of being stuck.
Yeah, I tell you, when you first talking about that, of identifying those systems, I had this puzzle come into my mind. The puzzle pieces, about putting it back together. And really, I bet if companies would look at it, is they have probably 20 to 25 to 30, I don't know the exact number, of systems that if they had those in place, it would change things automatically. And just think, like you said, if you pick the number one for that business owner and they start to save 2 hours a week, 3 hours, then they pick number two, look what that becomes, then the change. Plus, the business is relying on the others, and you get more excited. Because right now, I mean, we're seeing it. The numbers are dramatic of business owners that are getting out of business because they're stressed, overwhelmed, burnt out, whatever word you want to use. This changes that. And you and I, Josh, I know could go on for probably another hour, because I got plenty of questions I would love to ask you, but we don't have that time. But I really appreciate you sharing that. One thing I want people to do is, if you think this is for you, one thing is Josh goes out and he consults and works with companies there, and I'll let you share that. But his website is WTSenterprises.com. So make sure you check that out. I checked it out, and he's got great information on there, some of the case studies you talked about and things that you can do there. But share with them how different ways you do work with people, Josh.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Gary. So first off, of course, it's all based on this book right here, Work the System. It's in, I don't even know how many languages now, 4th edition. But beyond that, WTSenterprises.com, you're going to get a summary of the book. So of course, people like to download that. I do business systems assessments. And then in terms of how I work with companies, larger companies, we figure out where the problem is. Maybe it's cultural problem, strategic problem, process problem. And then I do customized scopes of work. But for everyone else, most small companies, it's remote, just like this coaching, right? So what I'll do is we'll do a business assessment, figure out where they are, and then we'll come up with a plan, a project plan, and then I'll work them through, all the modules, all the training, all the examples, all the templates for system improvement that we have, and then help them achieve those goals, right? And those engagements can go from a couple months to years, right? I got one client that I've been with for 6 years. He went from nothing to, I think he's doing $7 million a year right now. So that doesn't always happen, but like the point is, I'll put it this way, I'm not a hard sell. My goal is to help companies where they're at to as far as I can take them. And it might be, again, a few months or it could be years.
Well, you can tell from the way you've educated us so far, you're an educator first. You want them to learn the process. It's not about making the sale, those type of things. So please go check out his website, WTSenterprises.com. If it's something you're tired of being stressed out, burnt out, and you're ready for a new way to do it, this may be the answer for you. Like Josh said, pick up the book first, read the book. And then if you want some coaching to get through it, that's where he comes in and can work with you. He's, of course, on Facebook with Work the System, as well as LinkedIn. We'll have all that in show notes that you can access that information. But before I let you go, Josh, and it may tie in with what we've talked about, and that's fine, but I ask every guest that I have on this question: what's the best business advice you would give the business owners?
The best ones, especially those who are watching this, is you probably don't need more information, right? You probably, if you're watching this, you probably heard, listened to, read hundreds of books, and the trap is not getting more information. The real issue you have is assimilating the right information in the right order to take you where you want to go. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs need to do, is say, hey, you know what? Instead of being distracted by infotainment, I'm just going to do the fundamentals and see the improvements happen, because the ideas are already in my head. I learned them over the last 10 years. Of course, unless you're in your 20s, then you should be, reading and watching things. And so implementation's key. And if you don't have anybody who's going to help you do that, help you hold you accountable and give you some outside perspective, because your staff's not going to do that, your spouse is not going to do that, the people who are your vendors are not going to do that. If you don't have someone who's going to hold you accountable and actually give you clear advice, then I recommend hiring someone like Gary, someone like me, to help you navigate those choices.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, Josh, today, and some great information. Again, website is WTSenterprises.com. I tell you, business owners, I always give an action item as we leave and as we kind of wrap up. Well, my action item would be, why don't that collection of systems, why don't you just spend, probably you can do it in 10, 15 minutes, but maybe over a couple days so brain thinks differently, and just write down the systems that you would like to have documented. And really, let's start with the systems that you want to take off your load and allow someone else to. Don't even write them yet, just write the list. I think you're going to be surprised that list is shorter than you think. And then my challenge to you is, after you write the list, pick the first one that you want to get off your list and then write the system, and free yourself up of those 2 or 3 hours that Josh talked about. Josh, it was great to have you on the podcast. Thanks again for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Great advice.
Now, as you leave, there's other business owners that you know with the same challenge. So please like and share this podcast. Go to your podcast app. There's 3 little dots, and go down the share episode and just send it to them on a text message and say, hey, I thought of you. I do this all the time, even not my own podcast. Of course, I share those too, but I share other people's podcasts, because if it can make the difference in their life, you're making a difference, and you're knowing that that will help them. I know you've had a conversation with a business owner with this challenge, so go ahead and share that podcast. Come back next week. We'll cover another 6P area. And remember, anything we do right now in third quarter that helps us for fourth quarter, it really generates in next year to get a jump start on next year. So make it a great day. We'll see you next time.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.